Try it, Jacob, you might love it. Welcome back to My Cupcake Addiction. I'm Elise Straughn, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure you do for new videos every week. If you choose to subscribe, you can hover over the little alarm next to the subscribe button and opt to receive a notification so you guys get an email free to your inbox every single time I upload a new video. In today's video, I'm reworking one of the recipes from my new cookbook, Sweet Celebrations. In the book, I show you how to make this really cool, whimsical, rustic tree stump cake as part of my Rustic romance chapter. I've turned this cake into a really fun woodland cake, but today we're going to be turning it into a fairy house. And not just any fairy. The queen of fairies, Tinkerbell, and friends in a cake. I'm gonna build my cake today on a wooden slab. You can get these really cheap online. I've also got some chocolate ganache, dark candy melts or compound dark chocolate, parchment paper, a cute little fairy door, Tic Tacs, red M&Ms, white candy melts. I've got some straws and a 5-inch cake board, some fun candy rocks, crushed white cookies, you can use any, some green food coloring, and I've got my Tinkerbell figurines. You'll also need flowers. I'm opting for fresh and super bright colors. You're also gonna need 4 6-inch cakes. So if you've got my recipe book, that's 2 batches of my classic chocolate cake mix, and each batch is baked in 2 6-inch cake tins. I'll also link to that recipe down below. Let's get into our fairy house cake, and you can see the fairies behind me are getting up to all kinds of mischief. So before they completely trash my kitchen, I think we better get started. I'm gonna start by carving the very bottom and then also leveling the top of my cakes. And then I'm gonna divide them in half. So you should end up with about 8 1-inch high, 6-inch round cake layers. I'm building on my wooden cake board. It's up to you if you want to put anything down like a piece of parchment, but I'm going to use a 6-inch cake board just so that my cake itself doesn't actually touch the base. Now, normally this guy I would say is unacceptable because it's kind of the right height, but it's really rounded. But don't worry if you've got one that's slightly less than perfect, because that can be used to make our roots. The other ones, we're going to stack and layer with ganache in between. So a little ganache down on the board and then first layer of cake. A small amount of ganache in between, and then another layer. Do that until you've hit 4 layers of cake. So whenever you have quite a tall cake, I say as soon as you go over like 5 layers of cake, we're gonna use some supports to stop the top weight of our cake crushing the bottom. So I've got some milkshake straws. IKEA straws are also really good for this. They're kind of fat and they work like an egg. So if you pull them that way, they're not that strong, but end to end, they're actually really tough and they're super simple to cut. I always use straws as supports because they're so much easier to cut than the wooden dowel. Before I cut them, I'm just going to pull them up a fraction, just so that they hide kind of inside the cake instead of poking out the top unevenly. A little more ganache, and then in goes my center board. This is really standard practice whenever you're making a multi-story cake, but do make sure that if you're dropping it off at a party or serving it, that you let people know that there's 4 straws and a board in the middle so they can remove it prior to serving. Another layer of cake, and you stack until you've got all 7. You can find all of these stacking, layering, and tiering instructions in the Sweet Celebrations cookbook, or you can watch them here in this video, of course. Now that we've reached the peak or the pinnacle of our cake, just cover the whole thing in chocolate ganache, and then we can pop it off into the fridge about 15 minutes to set. Before that one goes off into the fridge, I'm gonna take my not so desirable cake layer. I don't wanna call him ugly, because no cake is ugly, but he's a little bit unique. And then I'm just gonna cut it basically like a great big pie. You can kind of take like some of the edges of your pie and you're gonna create makeshift tree roots. So basically just squish it up against the side of what will eventually be our Tinkerbell tree. This is just one of the recipes that I show you guys in the Sweet Celebrations cookbook. However, as well as super fun new ideas, it also incorporates really fun drinks and DIYs. So you guys can answer the question of, what do you do once the cake's made? How do you kind of elevate it that little bit more to create an entertaining extravaganza? Or if you just want to make a cake, you can just make a cake. At about this point, I'm going to stick my fairy door on. It's up to you if you want to make this out of like a fondant or out of gum paste, but I'm just using a store-bought fairy dough. I've made sure it's washed and dried thoroughly, and I'm just going to press it into the ganache. Tinkerbell has an entrance. Now just a little bit of ganache on each of those roots. And again, don't worry if this is not a super neat coat, because we're going to cover all of this with bark and tree matter. While that's in the fridge chilling out, I'm going to show you guys a pretty fun trick. I'm all about saving you time, money, and stopping you from having to buy fancy equipment. So while you can buy a bark impression mat for fondant for about $30 or $40, we're going to do the same thing with parchment paper and a little chocolate. Take your parchment, perfectly good parchment, and screw it up. We're not throwing it in the bin. You want to unscrew it, and voila, you have texture. We made our own impression mat. My book is full of fun, time-saving, and cost-saving tips just like this one. All right, I'm gonna take my chocolate now. Like I said, you can either use a dark candy melt or a compound chocolate. Either dark or milk is fine. And then you just wanna spread it. If it has cocoa butter anywhere in the ingredients list, it basically means that it won't stay set at room temperature. It'll just look like it's melting, but what it really needs is to be tempered. On goes my other piece of parchment. Smooth it off, and then we roll. Off into the fridge for about 5 minutes. It's not going to take very long to set it all. 5 minutes later, we're back from the fridge, and this is what you should have. Don't worry if it cracks, it's kind of supposed to. We've made a whole lot of pieces of tree bark. So let's get our cake out of the fridge. Because I've let that cake kind of set, it makes it really nice and firm to work on, but you'll need to put just a little more ganache on the outside so it's sticky again. You also want to put a nice amount of ganache on the top, and then we're going to run the back of a spoon through the top to give it like, I guess kind of like a wooden log effect. Something like that. Now that I've got my fresh coat of ganache, I'm going to start with my longest pieces of that chocolate, and you want to make sure that they just come a little bit over the top. So you can see them kind of like poking up over the top of your log. Use smaller pieces and any of your little scrappy bits to just cover the roots. And don't worry if you've got gaps, big or small, try and get it as close together as you can, but we are going to join it all together with a little more chocolate. Don't make this cake if you don't like chocolate. My advice. Also, don't come to my house if you don't like chocolate. Well, that's not fair. If you at least like white chocolate, you can come. To make your little mushrooms, you're going to use red M&Ms or peanut M&Ms and white Tic Tacs. Just attach a Tic Tac to the base of each little M, make sure the M's not showing, and let them set, and then use a little toothpick to put little white dots on top of each of your mushrooms. I took just a regular cookie, an Oreo, whatever you like, dipped it in some of those dark candy melts or compound dark chocolate, and then placed it onto a piece of parchment. While the chocolate's still wet, stick your fairy into the chocolate so she's held in place. Then you want to take a spoon and put like a generous blob of that leftover chocolate and make almost like an ice cream cone shape that's going to stab into the side of the cake, and the little cookie's going to be a platform. This is not a must, but I think it really adds, and they're super cute. So I'm going to carve a little guide hole where I want each of my side fairies. Maybe about there. And then press it right into the side of the cake. And then one on the other side. Just bear in mind, especially if you're going in this bottom layer, if you've got straws in there, and make sure that you're not exactly where your middle cake board is. They're just straws. Hopefully they'll get out of the way. Now you guys might think that that's done, but if you leave it like that, those little bits of bark are gonna start falling off, and we can do better. So I'm gonna use my remaining either compound chocolate or candy melts. I'm just gonna paint, and that's gonna bring everything together. Like a delicious glue. We're starting to bring it all together, so I'm gonna make a little moss just by using some crushed white cookie, any white cookie you like, and a snap seal bag, and a little bit of the leaf green. Into the snap seal bag goes my cookies. I've got a paste, but this is actually easier to do with a liquid food coloring because it just distributes better, but it will still work with a paste. Shake it all about. You might need to massage the paste through a little bit just to let it distribute, and then shake some more. Something a little bit like this. We made moss and it's actually delicious. Let's take a moment to appreciate the fact that I actually found a tiny shovel that is a spoon. Just all take a minute. It's kind of cool. All right, I don't even need a spoon. I just wanted to use my tiny shovel. So I'm gonna take a little bit more of my dark melted chocolate and then just apply it like randomly to the roots of my tree, and then sprinkle on a little moss to add a bit of green. Tinkerbell's overseeing my project management. Hands are on hips. I don't know if she's impressed. Now, adding flowers to a cake. This can be kind of a point of difference depending on how you want to add them. I wanted to use little edible like salad flowers, but I couldn't find them anywhere. They're actually really hard to find. So I'm going to use real flowers. I don't want to do a big pile on top. I kind of want them sticking out and around all over my log. So we're going to use straws to stop the flower stems from touching the cake. The straw's essentially going to act like a little tiny vase, almost, inside our cake. Work out where you want your flowers to go. You can pop the straw and it should go straight through, or you can pick a gap between your chocolate, trim it off, and then in goes some flowers. You don't really want to see the straw. It's just kind of hidden in there. And then in goes some of our little flowers. It's so pretty. Tinkerbell can sit on top. She's kind of the boss of everything. Any that I don't want to move around, I'm just going to put a little chocolate on the base of. She can be our door girl. She decides who gets into Tinkerbell's house. She's a good person to know. A few more flowers. Put a couple little mushrooms down under my flower. They can either go straight into the ganache, or you can use a little bit more of that melted chocolate or candy melt to attach. Just to add a little bit of greenery, I'm going to use some basil and some mint. Kind of like the way they smell. They add a little bit of freshness, but just to get a little bit of real living greenery just around the roots. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to live in this little fairyland with Tinkerbell. Two of the girls I thought were just gonna be too much, but I love this cake because you can pop off all of your little fairies, hand them out as a favor. Of course the birthday boy or girl gets Tinkerbell because she's the guest of honor, but all of this started from a very rustic, wedding, elegant looking log cake. I love looking at things differently. I love giving you guys multiple uses for things. If you haven't already got a copy of the Sweet Celebrations cookbook, it is on sale now, and it literally has tons of these ideas. What do you guys think? I've been making this Tinkerbell cake.
Whoa, can I add a few little rocks around?
You can add a few little rocks around.
Okay.
Do you want to give some to Jacob to add around as well?
Don't eat it.
You can eat these ones because these ones are candy. But then you can't eat normal rocks, just candy rocks. It's kind of confusing. It's a flower.
Yeah, pretty flower.
Shall we cut it? Everybody always wonders how you cut a cake like this. Because of the board in the middle, you can actually cut it like two separate cakes, like a top cake and a bottom cake. Where should I cut, boys? I don't want to cut it. It's too pretty. I don't want to cut Tinkerbell down.
A rock is sinking.
A rock is sinking. Earthquake, ladies, earthquake. Yo, piece. Whose piece is this piece?
Jacob's.
I hope you guys have enjoyed today's video. Make sure you subscribe for new videos every week. And as always, thanks very much for watching.